Greetings everyone and welcome back to a long overdue Flip the Script, episode 6, and actually the first episode of the new year. Sorry it took so long. Series kind of fell by the wayside through quite a lot, but we are back and there are a lot of questions on the last video. So while I usually try and keep this series 20 to 30 minutes, I think we might blow that out of the water today. Which is okay, because it's been a while, so I'm not really going to adhere to any specific length requirements. Hopefully that's okay. Remember, if you want a chance to have your question answered in the next episode of Flip the Script, leave a question in the comments of this video down below. And remember, if you try and go just beyond these typical, very basic, oh, should I get this balisong or that balisong? And you'll have a better chance of me actually answering your question. Flipping the Superfly today, which I have put some zippy inserts in. You can see it actually changes the sound profile of this thing quite a bit, though I'm not sure how much that's going to come across on camera. Without further ado, let's get into our first Flip the Script question. 2026. It's weird to say that. And there were a lot. Coming in first from IDK, where should you buy secondhand ballies? Now this is kind of difficult because secondhand in our hobby is very dead. I shouldn't say it's dead, but it's just not very active. I've made videos on this before. I can't remember what the actual name of the video was, but getting into Transformers, which you've probably seen littered all throughout my room, including on this shelf behind me over here, made me realize how absolutely incredible it can be to be a part of a hobby that has a booming and active secondhand market, because the Balisong community doesn't have that. In fact, actually, I'm remembering the name of the video. I think it was the problem with a review-based hobby or review-based content in the Balisong community. Something along those lines. It was maybe 8 or 9 months ago. I recorded it in the last apartment. I think shortly before I left, but I go into it way more there. Where can you buy secondhand Balisongs? Well, the main one is the account at Balisong Market V2, I think it is now, on Instagram. There are also some Discord servers. I know Will Hirsch's Discord server has a section where you can list and look for other people's Balisongs. And there is the subreddit. I believe people just post it in, I think there's an r/Balisong sale, and I think sometimes people will cross-post it into the actual Balisong community. Although I'm not too up to date on the selling side of things on the Reddit end of the spectrum. I usually just look through the Balisong sale or the Balisong Market Instagram account to figure out what I might want to buy, if anything. Just make sure to do your research. Don't get scammed. There are plenty of things to look out for. Make sure you're not I've actually had this happen before. Someone used pictures from my videos to try and say that they were selling a knife, which was insane, and I don't really know how to deal with that. Just make sure that the person actually has what they're doing. They have some references. It's not just some random account that just got made. There are a lot of things to go into that I unfortunately can't get into in full detail in this video. But Instagram, Reddit, sometimes Discord are probably going to be your best bets. Thank you very much for the question. Coming in from Act the Third, I feel like lately I've hit a skill plateau. I can do most of the basic tricks and a few smaller combos, but I can't seem to get past that. What would help in learning more tricks, and how can I incorporate them better in my daily combos? Well, incorporating them better in your daily combos just comes with consistency. The more consistent you are at a trick, the less daunting it is for you to try and do that trick. The less you have to mentally work to try and complete that trick correctly, and the more likely you will be to do it more often. So if you want to do something, more often, become comfortable enough with it such that you can kind of just do it, and then you'll notice that you start doing it a lot more. Once you overcome that hurdle of oh, I can't do this trick, I'm kind of scared to do this trick, or my brain just doesn't want to do this trick because I'm not good at it or because I don't know it. The more consistent and confident you get with that trick, the more that you will find that you do that trick and incorporate it into your daily combos, which comes with consistent practice. I've made a few videos at this point. I know it's been 4 months since you asked this question. I'm sorry, but definitely check out some of the more recent videos that I've made talking about helping with consistency and all of that stuff. And how do I find more tricks to learn? For me, the answer has always been watching people in the community who I enjoy the flipping style of. The number one source of motivation for learning and just a growth of my trick pool has been, I just saw like a story post or a cool edit on Instagram. That was a really cool combo that this guy did. I want to learn that. I think that would go really well into my trick pool. And so I learn it. So definitely get out there, watch Balisong content, look for creators and Instagram people or community members, whatever the case may be, who flip like you want to flip. And I think you'll notice yourself being interested in a lot of the things that they do and wanting to learn it. Thank you very much for your question. Here's an interesting one from Tepu Coco. Is that a play on a Pokemon? I think it might be, because I think your profile picture is vaguely Pokemon-like. Anyway, do you think budget balisongs are starting to reach their limit in terms of price or performance? I think so, but I also don't think that it's been tapped to its full potential. So recently we've seen the release of the Impulse by Nibali's, and I think this is kind of the true peak of price to performance in the balisong hobby. We've got a slightly worse quality aluminum, but not like crazy worse. It's just kind of different. We've got a steel blade, and it feels fairly like a normal balisong, unlike something like the Canyon or the original extrusion. This thing for $40, I think really is the peak of price to performance in the balisong hobby. I don't think we're going to really go much further than this. I don't think companies are really capable of going much further than this, and I'd be very surprised if they do, even something like Nibali's. That being said, I don't think that there are enough options at this price point for me to say that they've fully reached it. I think there are more ideas to explore in this kind of $40 price range. And then once we do that, once the $40 price range starts to look like the $75 price range did, which, let me remind you, the $75 price range, which currently in April of 2026 is a very flooded market with many different interesting designs, barely existed 3 or 4 years ago. So I think once we see this kind of $40 range establish itself with more than just like the Canyon and the Impulse, I think then we will have reached it. Maybe you'll see some like washer only balisongs with really cheap construction going for, lower of $20, $25, but I think we're kind of at the end of like bushing quality made balisongs price to performance wise, which is okay, because I was already happy with the $75 to $100 ones that we've been getting lately. So that's just my 2 cents. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Thank you for the question. Coming in from Reza. I think this is a good question. What handle finish do you think has the best grip? Well, if we're talking for aluminum, and this is me personally, I don't think it really has the best grip, but just kind of my preferences on grip. If we're talking aluminum, I think objectively Bead Blast probably has some of the most grip. Although, actually, I shouldn't say objectively, because I've tried some bead blasted balisongs that just don't freaking stay in my hands. I think Teflon, the Teflon coating, has some of the better grip that I've tried on aluminum balisongs. But it's not so much finish for me than it is really like hole pattern and cutouts and design elements in the handles themselves that actually help with grip rather than the finish itself. I've also just really liked the standard satin finish. Something like the Kraken is made of. I think that's just a satin finish. It just feels nice to the hand. I think some people find it slippery, but I find it to be pretty decent. And then titanium, pretty much, as long as it's titanium, it'll be fairly grippy as long as you don't ruin it with some weird coating method. I can't really think off the top of my head of a titanium finish that has felt super slippery to me. So just titanium in general, I think is pretty good. But honestly, Teflon coating has really impressed me these past few years. Thank you for your question. Going back to basics with Dippin' Boy here, for the beginners out there, what is the difference between bearings, washers, and bushings? Okay, I'm not going to go into this fully because this is meant to be a less in-depth question and answer thing, but washers are in every balisong, unless you have a really bad one from Amazon that doesn't have washers. Bearings and bushings both can use washers. Those are these little bronze things that you see on the inside. They're basically just a sacrificial layer. They're softer than the rest of the balisong is. They're meant to just be a buffer zone between your blade and your handles at its very minimum. Bushings are a little metal cylinder that go inside the blade that stick out on either side of the blade by just a hair, so that when you tighten down the screws, your handles will start squeezing. And on a normal washer balisong, if you tighten that down too much, the handles will squeeze the blade together and your handles won't move anymore. The bushing sticks out just a tiny bit so that the handles can then tighten down on that bushing, allowing for the blade to always have free swing compared to the handles. And bearings, well, if you don't know what a bearing is, I'd be a little more surprised because they're everywhere. Bearings are just a metal circle, or a metal cage, I guess you could say, that contains a bunch of little balls, and those balls roll. So imagine like, oh, I don't even know how to describe this. Imagine a metal ring, and there's a bunch of balls on the inside, and those metal balls stay where they are from the cage, I'm describing this really badly, but there's a little tube on the outside here, and the balls are in that tube. And now when I slide this over a surface, those balls just roll. Instead of the actual cage itself scraping along, the balls just roll back and forth. And that's what you have sometimes in a balisong handle up here by the blade. Most notably from someone like Zippy, or things like the Talisong Z from Flytanium. Some of the old Amazon balisongs used to have bearings. The Glider Bermuda, if you remember that. They're not super popular, but they do exist. And there's your very poor explanation of all three of those. There are other videos that explain this in much greater detail. Go watch those, but there's your very surface level explanation. Thank you for the question. Coming in from Swifty, Ethan, do you ever feel like you do the same tricks and combos so much that they get stale? Yes. And you feel like they get less smooth, like you've accidentally trained your muscle memory wrong. How do you fix this and get smoother again? Now this is a good one. Yes, I flip the same in most of my videos, and yes, it does get stale for me. Especially when I'm flipping outside of these videos, because I'm just focusing entirely on my flipping. It definitely does get stale, and that's when you kind of get the inspiration to learn something new and change up your style a little bit. But specifically, there was a period of time where I'm kind of still going through this, but where my flipping was just like really fast and jerky and all over the place. And I felt like I had trained my muscle memory wrong. So recently, I've been going back and trying to clean up my flipping. Maybe you've noticed in these videos that my flipping's gotten a little slower and a little more clean. Maybe you haven't. Maybe I'm not there yet. That's okay. But really, if you want to break your muscle memory and kind of retrain it, change the speed. Muscle memory is all about having all of the factors all in one. And when you change something up, it throws off your muscle memory just enough that you can actually start improving. So what I did is I forced myself to go slower, such that my muscle memory didn't kick in the same way. And there, I was able to actually focus on technique, especially because flipping slower doesn't let you hide as much of the jerkiness and the weirdness as flipping fast does. When you flip fast, you can hide a lot of imperfections in your flipping that flipping slow will really bring out and force you to come to terms with. And once you do that, you can kind of rebuild your muscle memory to make everything look a little bit smoother and maybe retrain your muscle memory a little bit. That is how I did it. Your mileage may vary, but I've found that to be incredibly effective. Thank you very much for your question. Coming in from Flippin' Eric. Good to see you, Eric. Hope to see you at Blade Show this year. With all the experience that you've had and all the advice you give, do you think you can or want to become a pro status flipper like all the greats? I think you can. Your flipping is a good flow. It inspires more flippers than you think. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But honestly, no. I don't have that drive, nor do I think I have the skill to be able to pull that off. I flip for myself first and foremost. I think I am at a point where I can flip well enough to provide the opinions that I do on all the balisongs that I do. And anything beyond that is purely for my own enjoyment of the hobby. Also, becoming a pro level flipper like that takes a ridiculous amount of hours that I just don't have. Maybe when I first got into balisongs, like the first year or two, I could have devoted all that time and really grinded because I, eat, sleep, and breathe balisongs at that point. But now I've stretched myself to so many different hobbies that going all in like that would mean abandoning all the rest, and I don't really want to do that. So while I'm not happy with my flipping right now, and that's why I've been trying to really drill to become at least a little bit better in recent months, I don't think I will ever have the drive or the skill to like try and become like a pro level flipper, like Maddie, Vav, Pyro, Banks, people of that caliber, or even a little bit under them. I don't think I can get there. I think I'll be content with being a slightly above average flipper, and then that'll be that. Flip for myself, because, I flip for internal factors instead of external factors. I don't care if people think I'm a terrible flipper. I could not give less of a shit. I just want to flip to where I'm happy, and I'm relatively happy with where I'm at right now. I do still want to improve, but never to the point of being a pro. And I will probably never compete in I will probably never compete in Comp, to get that question out of the way, because I have zero faith in myself to be able to flip a live blade on a stage in front of all those people and not slice a finger off. So, yeah. Thanks for your question, Eric. Coming in from Sutton, I'm decently new to the balisong hobby. I was wondering what makes a balisong better than another one, even if it has the same features. Such as the crackerakin and the Nabali's wing have almost the exact same features, but everyone agrees that the crackerakin is better. I'm going to push back a little bit. I don't think they have the same exact features. Most notably, their handles are extraordinarily different. But I see the angle at which you're coming at. The thing is that a balisong can be exactly the same on the spec sheet. Same length, same weight, same pivot type, same materials, but flip totally and completely different in hand. And that is because of something that we call balance and weight distribution. And ultimately, no two balisongs flip alike, even if they look almost exactly the same. So that's where you get preference and experience and just what people want to flip, what people see as better is just what they prefer. What flips more to their preferences? Does the weight distribution agree with how their flipping style is? All of that will come together to make one balisong, quote unquote, better than the other, despite the fact that on paper they are exactly the same. Because in reality, all of the things that you can't capture on paper on a spec sheet are really what make balisongs unique and what make them flip differently from each other. Hopefully that helps. Thank you for your question. Coming in from Frontline, do you like the direction that Squid, Nabali's, LDY, and others are going in terms of supporting the veterans and what they want rather than what beginners need and want? I would disagree completely. I mean, Nabali's is going all in on beginner stuff and hasn't released anything super veteran focused in quite a while at this point. Except maybe the Create with Nabali stuff. And Squid has a lineup that is open to everybody. They've got their professional level flippers and like the Kraken, the Tsunami, things of that nature. And then they've got their beginner focused balisongs with like the Mako and the Squiddy AL and the Squiddy lineup. So I don't really think that any company is going in a bad direction with how they're supporting beginners or veterans. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the essence of your question. But you also go on to ask, do you like to mod things to get things to flip better, or do you prefer to just get things stock and want them to flip better? In order for me to care about modding something, I have to enjoy the base experience of it first. And really, we're only looking at things like balance upgrades with like Zippy, something like the Orion spacers that Zippy makes, to kind of change the balance around a little bit. That's something that I would like. But if we're talking like full-on reblades to make a knife that I don't like become a knife that I do like, there's no point. If I don't like the balisong, I'd rather just flip something that I do like rather than spend a whole bunch of time and money modding something to make it slightly more like what I want it to flip like. And I also do genuinely enjoy having just stock balisongs flip the way that the creator intended them to, minus little cosmetic upgrades here and there with the likes of zippy stuff. Or if I really think that something is really close to how I want it, but I think a quick little mod will do it, then I'll buy like a spacer set or something like that. But it generally doesn't go beyond that. Thank you for your questions. Next question from Boiling Cauldron. As a new flipper, I've started learning less and less and practicing less and less. Do you have any advice for pushing past those moments where you struggle to learn newer tricks and lack motivation? This kind of goes back to what I said earlier in the video, where engaging with balisong content that you enjoy can be a really big motivation booster to getting you to learn something new. Seeing a really cool combo that you think you could learn will do wonders for your motivation to try and learn something, especially if you do a few tips that I've talked about recently, like screen record, figure out how to turn it into a loop so it's a bit easier to digest and get consistent at. And then I think you'll find that motivation returning. But also, if you're finding yourself just flipping less in general, then that's probably the reason your motivation is going down. You don't have that same excitement that you did. When everyone gets into the hobby, they flip all day, every day. And eventually you're going to fall out of that unless you're like Banks or something like that. And that's just kind of finding yourself with less motivation comes with that territory. You know, you don't enjoy it as much. You don't eat, sleep, and breathe it every single day, but you still choose to stick with it, even though it's not as fun as it used to be. It is still fun. Obviously, I'm not telling you to just force yourself to do a hobby that you hate like it's a job. But if you're finding yourself like, oh, I'm just not as motivated as I used to be, but I still enjoy it, you kind of just got to make that choice to stay engaged with it and find some things that will help bring back that excitement for you. And if you can't do that, then, you know, that's when people move on and find a different hobby that they enjoy more. Thank you very much for your question. Coming in from Branley. Love your videos and all you do for the community. Thank you very much. Not sure if this has been asked before, but here's my question. If you could create a Frankenstein's monster, what key components from other balisongs would you choose? This is a pretty easy one for me because mine really isn't a Frankenstein's monster. It's literally just the Sliff T blade with a kukri, or the Sliff T with a kukri blade. I think that would go absolutely crazy because the Sliff T is already a balisong that I adore. Even though it isn't my typical balance preference or profile, I love pretty much everything about it. And the only thing that would make it better to me is if it was my favorite blade shape, which is a kukri, which coincidentally would also give it a little bit more tip weight, which would make it flip way more close to my preferences, way closer to my preferences, and would honestly kind of make it the perfect balisong. Assuming I could just like magically fine tune the balance a tiny bit, Kukri Sliff T is like my dream balisong because I love everything about this to begin with, so it would only make it even more my favorite balisong, you know? Thank you for your question. Final few questions here coming in from King. Hey Ethan, love your videos and your live streams. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Do you think that the budget and better price to performance Chinese companies such as LDY are taking away from the more expensive Western sellers like Squid and Barfly, or do you think you're adding to these? This is a huge topic for discussion. Again, I'm going to have to give you my surface level opinion here just because this video has already been as long as it has, but I think it's a little bit of both. On one hand, you have companies making things like the cheese, which, yes, blow a lot of other balisongs out of the water in terms of price to performance. But the reality is, Squid is making balisongs like the Kraken, the Tsunami. No one who buys a cheese is in that price range looking for a balisong like that anyway. There's not going to be many people who are thinking, oh, I would love to buy a Tsunami, but the cheese is right there. I should just buy that instead. They're two completely different price points. So while, yes, they are taking away from that, you also have to consider the opposite, where someone could buy a cheese which is so good that it addicts them to the hobby, and then they go and they buy some of the more expensive stuff from the likes of Squid or LDY or something like that. And they go off and buy Krakens and Tsunamis and Seraphs and all of this stuff because the cheese was such an enjoyable experience. So I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. where, yes, it is taking away some customers from more expensive knife makers, for sure. Because there definitely are people out there going, why would I buy something for $400 when I could buy the cheese for $70? But at the same time, I think there's just as many people getting into the hobby going, oh my God, the cheese is amazing. I must try everything else that is more expensive, especially because companies like Nibali's don't make anything in that price range. So they specifically have to branch out to other companies to get that experience. Just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think. Thank you for the question. With that, so concludes episode 6 of Flip the Script. I am truly sorry this took so long to come out, but leave your questions in the comments down below and you will have a chance of me answering your question on the next Flip the Script. Again, the better your question is, the better chance it has to show up naturally. But don't ask me things like, is the Volp or the cheese better? Because I'm probably going to skip over that. I've made plenty of other videos that answer that question indirectly, if you read between the lines. So, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one. Later. And happy late Easter if you celebrate. Totally forgot about that.